I think we live in a world where it's very like you're this or you're that, or you're Labour or you're conservative, and the nuance has gone. And actually, when we really dig deep into who we are, we're very layered, we're very interesting, we're very complex. I genuinely believe like I was just, God put me on this earth to play football. Like no one sat me down and taught me how to play football. I was probably earning more money from the legal career than I was earning more money from law than I was football. I started £100 a week because kind of I had this insecurity about football. I was saving. I was sort of like, almost saving for a rainy day. My first professional contract with Chelsea was 2013. 3 years later, I bought my house, my first house. I'm really big on property. I like property investment. One of the things that I like now is the idea of converting properties. I want to be part of a sort of a movement really that retains resources in Africa and we start producing more in Africa. If you build your own table, you get to invite who you want to that table. It was one of those things like, if I don't do this, I'm probably going to regret it. And it was an opportunity to really build something from scratch, build a football club from scratch, which really doesn't exist.
You were a pundit at the last World Cup, 2022. What was the atmosphere like for you whilst you were out there? Welcome to the Takeoff Experience, where I sit down with highly driven people to talk about their journey, their failures, and their successes. If you want to take off in your career, your business, your finances, or your mindset, then this podcast is for you. This episode is sponsored by Money Hub, a secure money management app that helps you to manage your money with ease. The Money Hub app provides you with a single view of all your accounts by letting you connect your bank accounts, your savings accounts, investment accounts, your credit cards, all in one place. To help with your money goals, Money Hub has features that allows you to track your incomings versus your outgoings every single month, and also allows you to set and track your spending budgets every single month too. It's a fantastic app, right? Well, you can download the Money Hub app for free by tapping the link in my description. You can use the Money Hub app free for 6 months with no auto renewal. And if you really like the app, then you can continue using it for only £1.49 per month. It's a deal of the century, right? Well, make sure to go and download the app right now. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Welcome back to the Takeoff Experience. We have a special guest in the building, Eniola Aluko, here today. She's a football executive, commentator, and former England and Chelsea football star. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Awesome, amazing. So who would you describe yourself as, Eni?
Oh, that's a very layered question. But what I would say is that I'm not one thing. Like, I would say I'm what I call a hyphen. There's many aspects to me. Obviously I love football. I've played football since I was 5 years old. So obviously former professional footballer. Football was very much my life. Now I'm a, football pundit, not necessarily a commentator. That's a bit of a different field.
Okay.
Maybe co-commentator soon, and football pundit. As you said, a football executive. And I'm really interested in so many other areas of life as well. I love traveling.
Okay.
I love the arts. I love fashion, music. Really big on my family and friends, like spending time with them. So there's lots to me, I think, that hopefully is interesting to talk about on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be. But I wanted to take it back a little bit, talk about your story. I know where your parents from, but if for the listeners watchers that don't know, where your parents from?
So my parents are both Nigerian. I'm wearing green today.
Okay,
olive green,
cool.
Not deliberately. I mean, that was I just noticed I was wearing green. So both my parents are Nigerian, Yoruba to be specific. Okay. So cool. Eniola Aluko is for the Yoruba listeners is probably quite a typical Nigerian name. Recently, actually, Aluko apparently is a bit like Smith. Like,
really?
I was a bit gutted about that when I learned about it. It's a common.
I say it's common.
It means kingfisher in Yoruba.
Yeah.
And Eniola is it means a woman of dignity and wealth.
Okay.
Eniola is like a genderless name. So there's guys that are called Eniola, and there's girls that are called Eniola. So
that's true.
I really love my Nigerian roots, and I've leaned into it quite a lot actually probably since uni.
Yeah.
As an England player, from youth, that was quite a difficult journey for me. Like I felt like I had to be like, yeah, England, and I was, but the reality is that I was never really fully seen as English. But I think one of the things that has kind of developed and evolved has this idea of what British is, and I very much see myself as British Nigerian, and that's fine. Like you can be both, and it's a concept that I'm developing as a brand.
Okay, Brit Nigerian.
Brit Nigerian, Brit Ghanaian. My agent, my manager is Ukrainian American. Like so, my brand hyphen, which I will be talking about a little bit and releasing later on this year, is all about celebrating the different layers to who we are. I think we live in a world where it's very like you're this or you're that, or you're label, you're conservative, and the nuance is gone. And actually, when we really dig deep into who we are, we're very layered, we're very interesting, we're very complex. 1 minute you're crying, next minute you're dancing. So it's about, hyphen is about all the connecting things that make us who we are, and I'm very passionate about it.
I like that, and I like the fact that you said Brit Nigerian. I would classify myself as a Brit Nigerian and Brit Sierra Leonean in a
works.
way.
That works.
You moved to Birmingham as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was very young.
Yeah, when you were very young. And did you grow up in Birmingham?
I did, yeah.
Grew up most of your life there?
In South Birmingham. So for the Brummies listening, I'm from Kings Norton. I grew up on a council estate, playing football with all the boys and dribbling around the boys on uneven hills and Coke cans, and and it was great. Like I had a great childhood in Birmingham. And football was very much part of my identity. What was a positive identity for me. I was kind of known as the girl that plays football, and my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, and he's also a professional footballer, Shawnee, he, I grew up playing with him, and we used to be really skillful, and so we had a lot of joy through football, and I've got really great memories of Birmingham, and all the things that Birmingham's about.
Yeah. What was it about football that that's what I want to do. I really like this.
Honestly, genuinely, without being too well, actually, no, I don't care. I genuinely believe I was just, God put me on this earth to play football. No one sat me down and taught me how to play football. My dad played football and he was very good, but he never kind of made it a career. So genetically, I probably got it from him.
Okay.
But as early as I can remember, I watched football and I was obsessed with football.
Yeah.
And so it's just part of me. It's in my blood. It's part of my existence. And, no one forced me. It was I genuinely believe it's what I'm here to sort of be part of. Because everything that's been good in my life has come from football.
Okay, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm wondering, because a lot of people enjoy football, like football, but to actually take it seriously as a career, when did that kind of happen? When was that for you?
Well, women's football is a little bit different because women's football for the longest time was like a hobby, and there was no pathway to become a pro. There was not really any even academies really, or proper setups to really aspire to be part of. So I just kind of played in school, and there was an England setup. So I got into the England setup when I was 14.
Okay.
And that was probably when it started getting quite serious because, you travel with England and you go away. But it was hard because when you came back, the club setup, there was not really a professional league or whatever. So it kind of got serious with England, but then I couldn't really look forward and call it a full-time job or aspire to be a professional footballer because it didn't really exist in this country until sort of early 20s, really. So I went to America when I was 21 after uni and became a professional then. in America. And then it was only when I came back in 2012 that for the first time I could call myself a professional footballer. But at that point, I was already on the path to becoming a lawyer. So I had to juggle one professional career with another one. And so my pathway is very different to like my brothers, who from the age of probably 12, he was at Birmingham. He was, you know, what they call a YTS. So his sort of youth system, you know, they gave him a contract. He went on loan to Aberdeen and his professional career started. And obviously he was earning good money from quite a young age, whereas I had to kind of go a different path.
Yeah.
I was probably earning more money from the legal career than I was earning more money from law than I was football. You know, I started £100 a week at Charlton, and I thought I was cool at the time. You know, I was like, all right, you know, I can buy my trainers and a little pocket money here and there. It was all relative, you know what I mean? I was never like bitter. You know, it was what it was because I was playing football at the end of the day.
Wow, that's insane. There's a few follow-up questions that I had. So yeah, I noticed that you said that you was studying and you actually graduated in law. I think I remember reading first degree.
Yeah, I got a first. Yeah.
And did you actually go through the law career like completely?
Yeah. So obviously I went to Brunel. Shout out Brunel.
Yeah. Good uni.
And really enjoyed studying law. But again, at that point, I was pretty, you know, semi-pro playing for Charlton, and then I moved to Chelsea for a year. So I didn't really have the uni experience. Like I wasn't going out raving.
Yeah.
I was in the library a lot, and I had to catch up a lot because I'd be training or I'd be in the gym, and I'd have to like do a program, you know, physical program. And law's hard, like, you know, studying law's hard. So I had to really knuckle down. And once I graduated and, you know, worked really hard and obviously got a first, and which I was very proud of, I was then obviously on the legal path. And then I did what you call an legal practice course, which everybody has to do. And then I started training with a firm, with two firms actually that specialized in sports and entertainment law. So pretty early on, I knew I wanted to go into sports and entertainment. And I started on that path. And then I got the opportunity to go to America and play pro, which was always going to be a priority for me if I had the opportunity to play pro. But what happened with the law thing was that I was able to say, well, if I'm going to give up my legal career to play football, you kind of have to match my salary.
Right.
As a trainee lawyer, and that sort of was almost like a foundation for me to sort of build my sort of my financial health, really.
Okay.
Because I started off as a lawyer and then was able to say, well, I can't really give this up unless you match at least what I would be paid as a lawyer. So that helped a lot.
Okay. Wow. How did those conversations go? Like, how did you find?
Fine. Yeah, they weren't hard at all because obviously as a footballer, you know, the team wants you. And I was good at football. And actually the team that I went to America for, a team called St. Louis Athletica, the owner was a lawyer. So it was a godsend really, because he said to me, why don't you come play for me 7 months out of the year? I think so, 7-month season. And then the other 5 months work in my firm. So in essence, both of my careers kind of started at the same time in terms of professional, you know, obviously playing as a professional footballer and then working as a lawyer. And for those that know, obviously in the legal profession, it's very competitive. It's very difficult to get like a training contract or a job straight out of uni. So it was godsend really that happened. So it wasn't a difficult conversation at all. It was actually something that he kind of sold to me.
Yeah.
And which then helped me put that on my CV. And then I came back to England and was able to move to another firm, etc.
Wow. So after you did that, you actually came back and you continued with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was like I was already on the path of balancing both law and football anyway. So then it was about, okay, well, until like I can actually properly take football seriously as a professional career in England, I'm going to keep doing this law thing. Because I was working at really good firms. I was in a really interesting area. So I trained at a sports and entertainment firm, and all of my training areas were like celebrity divorce law, like litigation cases between like, comedians and entertainers, like big cases. I worked on the hacking inquiry, where news of the world were hacking phones, like really kind of interesting areas of law. So at the time I was like, this is great, I'm whatever happens, I'll be all right, because I'm developing in areas that I'm really interested in and I'm growing in. So and then obviously post Olympics 2012, women's football really blew up. And then Chelsea offered me my first professional contract. But again, I was able to go in and say, well, I'm giving up a really good job and a really good pathway. So, this is minimum really what, I should be getting. And they were absolutely fine about it. And I stayed at Chelsea for 7 years and loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually, because you mentioned after Olympics, that's when, not that it got taken seriously, but financially, women's football was getting a bit more supported. Did it happen after that time, after the Olympics?
Yeah, so the Olympics, 2012 Olympics obviously was in London.
Yeah.
And women's football opened the Olympics. So I think by virtue of that, it exposed women's football to a much wider audience than had been ever exposed before. And I think people really respected the game a lot more and were thinking, oh, like, wow, like this is women's football. These girls can play. And so, we started to see shifts in terms of the media, in terms of brands getting involved, in terms of broadcasting. And I guess the big clubs like Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, who, by the way, all copy each other. If one does a women's team, I mean, I have to say Arsenal were probably the leaders in,
of course,
of course, enjoy that moment while you can. But yeah, to be fair, Arsenal were always sort of the first out of the gate in terms of their women's team. But it took a while for others to catch up. But post Olympics, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, and then Man United followed, and then so that's when serious contracts came in. We were training at the training grounds of the men's teams, like all of these things. I was like, okay, now it's worth it to like put most of my eggs in this basket.
Okay, cool. And I was wondering, do you know, for some of your colleagues that because you were quite fortunate that you were able to have like a dual career and support yourself until it kind of got serious. For other people, were they also doing other things as well to support themselves?
For sure, yeah. So I had a teammate that was working in banking.
Okay. Wow.
I have had teammates who like was training to be physios and like more sports related work. Students, obviously. Yeah, like we did have to be creative as female players.
Okay. Wow.
Because again, like for a long time, we didn't really have like certainty, certainly financial certainty, to say, right, this is what I'm going to do for the next, however many years of my life. I'm really glad now that's changed. Now that you have young girls growing up who can say, I want to be of England footballer. I want to play for Chelsea one day and be a pro, right? Yeah. And so on that pathway, they can make certain decisions to prioritize that.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm glad that is evolved the way it is.
Yeah, me too.
Is evolved a lot. I had a question actually for you, because at Chelsea you won numerous titles, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand, what was the culture like during that time in terms from like a mentality point of view?
Oh, like Chelsea was unapologetically about winning.
Okay.
And it was all obviously led by Emma Hayes, who's the sort of head coach. She's been there for 10 years now. She was a winner. She wanted to win, but in the wider context of Chelsea is a club, or certainly under Roman Abramovich, the former owner, that they were just ruthlessly about winning. Like when you drove through the gates at Cobham, there's no other discussion. Like, we're here to win. Do you know what I mean? And they make decisions based on that. And I like that, you know what I mean? Because it's very clear, and it's very aspirational. It's, you play to win, you train to win. And it brought the best out of me as a player. I think that shifted slightly. I mean, obviously everybody wants to win, but I think with the new owners now, they've probably brought in a more long-term approach in terms of buying younger players. And I think the mindset shift might have to change a little bit in terms of the fans, because for 15 years, Chelsea have been about winning.
Yeah.
You know, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, these guys won the league, and, you know, Thomas Tuchel won the Champions League, Roberto Matteo won the Champions League. Like, these guys did it and won it. And, you know, so and I've taken that into other areas of my life as well, in terms of like, if you're going to set out to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Do it as best as you can, and try and win in whatever, you know, in whatever you're doing.
Yeah. I wonder, where does that mentality come from? Because not everybody has that mentality, right? And it's always fascinating to meet somebody who's actually, you know, gone to the highest level and has achieved so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, by virtue of like only one person or team can win, right? So someone's going to lose on the way to winning. Someone's going to fail. It doesn't mean they're not good enough or they're not as good. It just means that at that moment in time, failure was for them. And failure is a huge part of winning. You know, like, yes, I'm at won multiple trophies at Chelsea, but I failed many times too. And, you know, as a team, as an individual. So I'm not somebody that's like, if I don't win, I'm worthless. You know, I kind of enjoy the journey, and I try and take as much out of failure as well. And I think that's really important to talk about and say, because it is really not a linear like journey. You know, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of disappointment, setbacks, there's a lot of questioning yourself on the way to winning. But if you sort of keep that resilient pursuit, you get your rewards in the end.
Yeah. Amazing. Do you feel like you made any sacrifices?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, my whole career really, like, if you look at it, like, I've missed so many birthdays, weddings, funerals, you know, special moments with friends and people. And I always think now, like, I really appreciate my close-knit friends and family, because a lot of the time, like, you got to be like, oh no, I'm playing a game, and they kind of have to like accept that. Relationships, like, it's really hard to have relationships, you know, doing what I do, because you're quite selfish. You have to kind of, you know, make decisions based on your career. And so yeah, there's tons of sacrifices. And actually, when I retired, I was very like big on clawing all of that back.
Right.
So like,
couldn't be happier.
Yeah, like clawing time back, like spending time with family, spending time with friends, like on a weekend going out for a drink and not feeling guilty about it. And, you know, going out for nice meals, traveling, and not just seeing a football pitch in a hotel, like actually traveling and seeing like different cultures and stuff. So you do claw all of that time back when you retire, but you've got to be quite conscious about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's always so interesting. What would you say is like the most proudest moment of your time as a footballer?
Proudest moment of my career is probably winning the FA Cup. Winning the FA Cup with Chelsea. It's so hard to pick, because I hate picking, because I'm proud of it all. But I remember the feeling when we won the FA Cup at Wembley with Chelsea, and I was crying tears of joy. I was so happy. And it was like something broke. Like, it was like a deadlock had broken for all of us, but particularly for me in my head. Like, there was a lot of near misses leading up to that point, and I was so desperate to win that day. And I didn't actually enjoy it that much, because I was so kind of like anxious to win. Had a lot of anxiety that day. But we did it, and you know, one of the things that I really appreciated was that I did it with like friends that like I can actually call like friends. Like, post retirement, I still hang out with a lot of the girls some of the girls that we won together that day. So you kind of bond you together for a long time. So if I had to pick, that would be the day. It was probably one of the best days of my life.
Amazing. And then when you retired, you went into becoming a sporting director, right?
Yes.
How was that? How does that differ to, you know, the day-to-day of being a footballer? What was like the differences in responsibilities?
Yeah, so I've obviously always been somebody that wanted to kind of stay educated. I think that's just really healthy. Whoever you are, just like keep learning and, you know, in what you're interested in. So um, probably about 2 years before I retired, I started a master's, and it was UEFA Masters to become a sporting director. I knew, based on what I just said about sacrifices and time and stuff, I knew I didn't want to go into coaching. I felt like it was too close to playing, and you kind of have to be on the pitch, and I felt like the sporting director role was a little bit more removed. It kind of tied into my work as a lawyer, so it kind of fit what I wanted to do in the game. And so I did that master's. It was really great. Like, I connected, and it was a huge network and lots of people. And then sort of off the back of that, I got an offer to become a sporting director at Villa.
Okay, wow.
The first sporting director at Villa. And obviously that was back in Birmingham, and there was a link to me being from Birmingham. And so that actually was probably the thing that made me go, okay, now's the right moment to retire, because I probably could have played on. I retired at 33, which a lot of people say is young. And it probably is young, actually, because I was probably fitter at 33 at Juventus than I was at 25. Like, they were mad about fitness. Like, so I could have played on, but I felt like that was the right time to move into the next phase of my life. And yeah, it was very much a job that I really felt like I could do. I had the knowledge and the skill set to do. But it was my first day was March 2020. So the pandemic had hit proper.
Wow.
So we had game cancellations. We had to have COVID testing, like all of these things that no one had ever dealt with before.
Yeah.
I was dealing with in my first week in the job.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, masters was out the window. Like, so, but I'm grateful for it, because, you know, it's all experience that taught me a lot, and, made me a better executive, if you like. And obviously lots of mistakes made, and lots of growth in that field.
Amazing. And at what point did hyphen come in?
So hyphen is inspired by my book. So I released a book in 2019, which really was it was a football autobiography, but it was slightly different in the sense that I didn't really want to write a book about, oh, look how great I am as a footballer. Oh, I scored this great goal. I wanted to write a book about some of the issues that I've dealt with, that other people deal with, but from a footballer's perspective. So I wanted to write a book about, like, identity, race, women in sport, being in male dominated environments, like friendship, failure, success, like some of these issues that are not easy topics, but from a footballer's perspective. And so one of the chapters was called Embrace the Hyphen. And Embrace the Hyphen was all about embracing the sort of British and Nigerian sides of myself. The Nigerian side, which I kind of probably suppressed a little bit, because I felt like I had to be like this England, patriot, which I am. I'm passionate about England, but there's so many different sides to me as well. So when I wrote the book, I got a really great response from that chapter, and a lot of people felt like they can relate. And I thought, oh, there's something in this. There's a community in this. And so it's kind of been in my mind for the last 3 years. I haven't really had the bandwidth to really kind of. But 2023, watch this space. It's coming. It's coming.
Amazing. A question I had for you, because you've gone through this as a footballer in terms of like finances, right? Were you ever like advised on, because, typically I guess a footballer's career, let's say they start like 18 and let's say they retire 34, that's what, 14, 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. I guess maybe compared to somebody else, maybe they're retiring at 65.
Yeah.
Were you ever advised of how to manage your money, or?
No. Yeah. Do you know what? It's a great question, because it's a real area for me that it's kind of like this like blank space in the game where a lot of players have advisors, agents, sort of additional service, if you want to call it, that you either find a really good one or you find people that want to exploit you. Most of the time, there's a lot of people that want to exploit you. Now, there's obviously services like the Professional Footballers Association, who I've worked with very closely, who are great with me. But those really aren't conversations that a lot of footballers think they can have. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about a little bit more, because imagine if for every time a player went and bought a Bentley for, I don't know, 250 grand, however much a Bentley is, they had someone telling them, yeah, cool, enjoy your life, drive that Bentley, but make sure you're saving 100 grand for a property investment or something else. I think that you will get less players retiring, and you'd hear less stories about bankruptcy and, you know, oh, this player's living beyond, you know, higher than their means and all of these things. So I do think it's an area that, like, you shouldn't start talking about when you're retiring. It's something that should just be part of, you know, the everyday experience as a footballer, because it is, you do retire early.
Yeah.
You know, most people's careers are starting, like, not starting, but most people's careers are kind of evolving and taking off in their early 30s. Most footballers are thinking about winding down in their early 30s. And the way football is set up from a finance point of view, clubs start looking at you as a depreciating asset come 30. I don't really understand it, because the physical body is quite defiant, and you get people like Ronaldo or, you know, Ibrahimovic, who, Ibrahimovic is probably a bad idea because he's always injured. But, like, you get people like Ronaldo who are 37 who look better than most people who are in shape. But football does view it that way. Like, your contract's not going to be as good at 30 than it was at 25. So even from that perspective, clubs financially look at it that way. They don't see you as an investment anymore. So I do think it needs to be more of a, like, you know, more of a sort of obvious conversation that players have.
Yeah. I wonder for you, how did you deal with the transition from, like, a money perspective for yourself? Is it because you decided to take on roles so that was able for you to, maybe you didn't see too much of a change? Because I guess some footballers, maybe they're not transitioning to something else per se.
Yeah, I think for me, maybe I was a little bit lucky because I was working as a lawyer early on.
Yeah.
And so I had exposure to decent salaries. You know, the sort of average salary in London, if you're a trainee lawyer, is probably about 50 grand, right? Yeah. Upwards of 50 grand, depending on what firm you work for. A lot of my friends went on to what you call magic circle firms, which, you know, starting salary could be 80 grand plus. It's a very good salary in London. So I kind of had a base where I was exposed to that kind of salary early on. And because kind of I had this insecurity about football, I was saving.
Okay.
You know, I was sort of like, you know, almost saving for a rainy day, because I didn't really know.
Very smart.
You know, I mean, you say it's smart, but it's like, it's standard. It should be like,
it should be, you know,
standard, it should be a standard thing that we do. And, you know, obviously I treated myself. You know, I'm not one that's going to be like, oh, don't go and buy a nice pair of trainers or a nice pair of shoes or whatever. But you know, you have to save and be smart about your money. So I was already saving from sort of my legal stuff. And then when I dropped that and became a footballer, that was already part of, you know. So really, my first professional contract with Chelsea was 2013. 3 years later, I bought my first house. Okay. Nice. So again, in those 3 years, that's what my focus was. Like, I really want to buy a house. I was renting at the time in 3 years. So that was kind of like how I started out. But for someone who, you know, doesn't have that background, I would just say, like, have a kind of rule in your mind of, like, you know, hold back 10% of what you earn, hold back 20% of what you earn, and that will accumulate. And whatever you want to invest that in, you know, invest it in. Obviously, property is probably the, you know, the best example. You know, most people want to own a property at some point rather than sort of pay somebody else's rent, pay rent and pay somebody else's mortgage. But it's obviously not that easy.
Yeah.
So you've got to be patient with yourself and kind of give yourself time to do that. But if you accumulate over time, you will get there. You know, that's kind of been that was my experience. Because again, like the salaries in women's football are not anywhere near what they are in the men's game. So yeah, that was kind of how I kind of got on the property ladder and sort of treated my finances.
You know what I find so fascinating is the fact that you actually got a property. Not to say that footballers get a property, I don't know that, but I find it fascinating that you actually did. And you also said that you had a rainy day fund, which is,
well,
like you said, it should be normal, but it's not.
Well,
it's
the
not
rainy
normal.
day fund was my deposit for my house.
Okay.
Like, you know, once I put the deposit down, I said, "Oh, this times are tough." You know, like it was then. Like, okay, like all my money's gone into this house that I've been saving for years, which like, it's fine because again, I was on a salary. So, that was just going to continue funding my life. But I had to put all of those savings into a deposit for a house, which we all know in London is hard. I mean, there's obviously different schemes now in terms of Help to Buy and things like affordable housing or things like that. But, I bought near the training ground, in West London, which is, it's not cheap.
No, this is definitely not.
So I thank God I was able to kind of, invest in that, but it was tough. It was, it pinched.
Yeah.
It pinched a little bit. But yeah, like I said, it's about making sure that you hold a little bit back for whatever it is that you feel, is important. Always have investment in mind. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, and are you invested yourself personally in other things yourself?
Yeah, so I'm really big on property. I like property investment. One of the things that I like now is the idea of converting property. Okay. So making something into something multiple. So commercial, for example, taking a commercial property and making it multiple dwellings. I really like that. I like character properties that are able to do that. So something with a bit of history. So if I see an old church that is on the market, like that will get my eye quicker than, a new development because it's got character and history. So I'm big on property development. And my mom, from a young age, I was exposed to that because my mom invested in property when she could.
Okay.
Nice. So she's kind of passed that down to us as kids. Stocks, I'm still trying to learn.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand.
It's not simple.
Index
funds are better.
Some of my friends are telling me about crypto and I'm like, I'm just understanding just the basic stock market. So the crypto thing, I stayed well away.
Yeah.
I collect art.
Oh.
I collect art. So I've got a really good, in my opinion, I've really got a good art collection. Okay. It's mostly African art.
Okay. How do you find that? Find the African arts? Where about?
Well, I mean,
get them?
Well, when I travel, so I've been traveling back and forth to Africa, different countries in Africa, probably about the last 5 years. Again, that was something I was kind of big on post-retirement. So obviously Nigeria, I've been to Kenya twice on safaris, Uganda, South Africa, Botswana, Ghana, and those different places I will buy African art.
Right.
From either a well-known artist or a local artist. Okay. And there's a market for that, and it holds value. Or there's other art that also I just bought a really amazing piece of the Queen that was kind of a cultural take on the Queen. Mm-hmm. And again, like that's a piece that I think could hold value depending on how many of them there are. So that's an area that I collect for myself, but I will potentially sell one to get another one, and so I think that's a market that I'm definitely interested in. And the last one is kind of quirky, but I collect chessboards.
Chessboards?
Yeah, I collect chessboards. So I started playing chess about 2 years ago, and I really love chess. Like I love kind of just the calmness of it. Like I've got a very busy mind, and so chess for me like calms me down, makes me think strategy. And chess is so historic, like it's such a historical game, and there's been so many artistic takes on a chessboard.
Yeah.
So I just bought a chessboard that was all African village leaders.
Wow.
And it's dope. Like,
yeah,
it's
that is dope. That
sick.
sounds really dope. Yeah.
It's really dope, and it's like hand carved. And the guy that designs it actually he's quite a well known stylist.
Okay.
So just super artistic, super creative.
Wow.
And I saw it and I was like, I have to buy this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was an investment. Like, it wasn't cheap, but there's only like a few of them in the world.
Yeah.
I've got another chess piece that kind of sits in my living room that's like a marble chess table. So again, that's something that potentially, I can exchange and sell. I don't know if there's a market for it per se,
maybe if you hold on to it,
I think that kind of sits within the arts. So yeah, those are kind of quirky things that I think hold value. And I've just recently started learning about gold.
Okay.
Gold
Nice.
is another commodity that is African, is an African commodity that I think holds a lot of value.
Yeah.
That obviously, I wear gold, and generally I think I'm passionate about African commodities and things that can be, typically have been extracted from Africa. And I'm trying to, I want to be part of a sort of a movement really that retains resources in Africa, and we start producing more in Africa.
That would be nice, right?
So like, you see how
yeah.
we just take it for granted that it has made in China, or, now there's a lot of made in Portugal. I would love in the next 10 years to see made in Africa a lot more, because I think there's an extraction culture that, is part of industries, but I think we need to retain and produce. So yeah, all of those things I'm always thinking about in terms of business and investment and creation and all of those things.
Wow. That's amazing. I wanted to land on the property and actually a bit more on art if we can. On the property, so you said that you like doing conversions, right? Is there like particular areas in the UK that you like, or is it just anywhere that you?
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Like, I'm a learner, man. Like, I listen to Eniola Aluko. It's a good podcast for anyone that sort of wants to get into the nitty gritty and get gems. Get gems about property investment and investment in general. I think they're really good, although it's quite American focused. They came to the UK recently, and I'm not sure they got their audience right, but they're really good. Obviously, London for me is, I don't think you can go wrong.
That's true.
I'm not an expert. I'm not sitting here as an expert, so maybe you can go wrong, but it's, there's so many areas of London that are sort of hotbeds really for renting. One of the things that I think people often think is that you got to buy a property, do it up, and then flip it and sell it. Actually, the rental market, there's something to be said for just letting a property sit, have it for rent, and then let the capital appreciate. There's so many areas that you can do that. So definitely London, the student cities. So obviously I've invested in Birmingham as well.
Okay.
That's a huge student market. So student properties that are HMOs, obviously rental value is high, because you can have 5-6 people in a property, and it's almost having like individual individual dwellings within one house. So that's something I did quite early. And because it's Birmingham, I was like,
Okay, wow, you got in early before the people talking about HS2, is it?
It's quite saturated now, but so I would always say, like, look at student properties if that's something that you want to get into in terms of like, yielding rent and what are relatively cheap properties actually to buy, because some of these places are quite run down, these student properties, and you can kind of do it up to a certain level. So like cities like Bristol, Liverpool, Birmingham, like you will always have students in those cities. Because there's such good schools out there.
Yeah. I wanted to actually ask this question. Even though you kind of had a law career and a football career, I feel like you still had an element of freedom compared to maybe like a person that's maybe working a corporate job in a way. Would you say it's fair to say post your football career that, I guess, how did you navigate that, I guess, post football career? Was it just like, okay, left football career, sporting director job, or was it left football career and then started businesses, I guess, after that?
I think I've always been a bit of a hyphen, you know, like even when like I was playing, if I'd finished training at 1, I'd go to a conference or I'd go to like an event or I'd go and have a meeting with, I don't know, a lawyer, or I'd do something to like continue my development off the pitch. We've got a lot more time, I think, than probably the average person because, you know, we're training, you know, 9 till 1 o'clock, 9 till 2 o'clock, and you've got more hours in the day to do something else. So I was always like that, even when I played. And so that just kind of continued into, well, that kind of set me up really for, you know, post-career. And it's something you know, I don't think you can ever have enough conversations with footballers about this, where it's like, rather than going home and sitting on your PlayStation every day, I mean, respect if you like a PlayStation, but if that's all you do, I don't think that's the best use of time. Because the thing is about footballers, like, everybody wants to talk to you. True. It's a real door opener and it's a real icebreaker. So you can really like use that to do anything you want. You know, if you play for Chelsea or Arsenal or any club really, and you're known, man or woman, like, you'll be surprised how many doors, you know, that open, or the amount of freebies or free invites or guest lists that you can get on just by the fact you like kick ball. You know, so like capitalize on that, because you'll be surprised when you're retired, people forget about you quickly. You know, unless you obviously stay within industry, it's quite fickle. So utilize it, build a network, you know, use the fact that, you know, it's such an icebreaker and it's such a door opener to your benefit. Use that time as much as you can.
What are you trying to achieve outside of football for yourself? We mentioned property, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily there's not sort of like one area per se that I want to achieve, but I think that for me, generally, sort of as an umbrella, I'm really passionate about ownership and sort of building our own tables, to use a I suppose an analogy that I think Beyonce said it, you know, if you build your own table, you get to invite who you want to that table. Often we are part of other people's tables, and that's fine. You know, that's the employment world, or, you know, that's life. You can't do everything alone. But particularly for the Black community, I think it's really important to own your own podcasts, own your own content, you know, production companies, property, buildings, because then you get to dictate as a gatekeeper what happens, you know. So for me, that is my overarching aim, within also obviously working with other people and broadcasters and etc. Like, I love all that, but I you know, I want to own my own brand. I want to come on platforms of other people, you know, in my community that own their own platforms. Like, I'll always back that, because I think for a long time through history that just hasn't been our portion, and now it's, you know, we gotta build our own tables and
do,
you know, cut our own cake, you know. And I think that will definitely continue to evolve the world, really, you know. I think we forget how powerful we are as a consumer, as a you know, as a people, and in terms of every facet of life. So we can really capitalize, and the people that have done it, you know, like Beyonce, like Jay-Z, like these people, like, they started out with a talent like we did, and they just capitalized, and they got to a point where they said, no, I'm going to own this now, and now I dictate to you how this works. So I generally, that's my kind of North Star. And everything that I try to do, I try to incorporate that idea into it.
In terms of, like, you know, from a Black perspective in the community, you know, there's always this narrative that, we can only be successful in sports and media. And obviously something that we're trying to do here at Savvy Wallet is we're trying to change that, that Black people can actually be more successful in other aspects. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like your podcast, because it stood out to me as something different and something that's really important and unique in terms of speaking to the Black community in an area that typically we don't really speak about, or we're not seen as successful within. I don't think there's anything wrong with our success in sports, media, fashion, music, but I think that the world is constructed that way deliberately. And it's really important that we can break through in other areas that run the world. So again, ownership, finance, business, debt finance, production, all of these things I think typically have been owned and managed by other people other than Black people. So and we have to be conscious when we are creating content to not to feed into that. So whether it's Savvy Wallet, there's other podcasts, Earn Your Leisure I mentioned, I love those guys for they're very focused and specific. You won't hear them breaking into talking about how many kids Nick Cannon's got. Like, it's not important. You know what I mean? Like, that's his business, good luck to him. But they stay strictly to finance, and they bring guests on who then talk about that, and that gives nuggets of information for you to go, oh, do you know what, I never thought of it like that, let me do this. And so a lot of the podcasts often are very pop culture, and that's fine, but I think we need to think about, okay, cool, what have I got from that, other than what the sort of world expects to hear from us. I'm not saying that light entertainment's not important. It is. I listen to loads of stuff that really doesn't help my life, and I enjoy it, but I'm conscious about, okay, rather than putting on Beyonce Renaissance, I'm going to listen to Earn Your Leisure or Savvy Wallet, or I'm going to I listen to a podcast about football finance, and really a guy called Kieran Maguire is like the leading lecturer in football finance, and he breaks a lot down about like financial decisions in clubs and accounts in clubs, and it helps me as a pundit because it allows me to kind of see things a different way, and so I listen to those things, and again, it's just areas that I think we should really attack.
Definitely agree. I think we need to definitely change that narrative for sure, because again, I think, and you're starting to see it, like, for instance, my career is in technology. I feel like technology,
tech as well, for sure,
definitely a lot of opportunities there.
Tech is, tech runs the world, and so again, whether it's fintech or more traditional technology or renewable energy or sustainability, these things might feel a bit dry and a bit boring, but they're the future, and we need to be part of that future. So we can't just be a consumer, we need to be owners and producers of that future. So and I think we're in really good hands with the next generation. Like, they're far more creative. Phones now have allowed us to be more creative. I mean, I remember not having a phone, and I'm only 35, so I still think I'm young, but I remember not having a phone. Things have moved on dramatically since then. You can produce so many things from just having 2 iPhones, and so I do think that, like, the next generations, like, if you want to call it Gen Z or whatever, they're very creative and very kind of ambitious, but we just have to be conscious that, like, are we playing into the safety of, like, music and fashion and all of those things, or are we moving into more kind of new areas for us as Black people and people of color?
Okay, wow, amazing. Are you planning, do you think you'll plan anything? I know we spoke about Africa a little bit. Is there any plans, maybe you don't want to reveal them, but is there any plans for, like, Nigeria to do a similar thing there?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, always, like, whether it's football specific or otherwise, Africa is like, you know, a big part of a lot of what I think about. As I said, you know, I'm passionate about really changing the perception of Africa, or doing my bit to change the perception of Africa in every way, like business, production, you know, fashion. And I think that's happened. You know, Africa to the world is a thing, you know, whether it's in music, fashion, you know, fintech, I think is an area now, like you'll be shocked at how much you've got some real talented like people producing data and, you know, fintech apps and all this kind of stuff. I work with a brand called Chipper, and they're a money exchange brand out of Silicon Valley, African owners.
Really?
Yeah, Egyptian guys,
Okay.
Egyptian and Ugandan. Amazing product. And that sparked others to do the same in Africa, you know. So Africa is always central to my psyche and what I want to do. And it's just hard though, because some of these narratives stick, you know, oh, you know, you can't invest in Africa because it's corrupt, and, you know, logistically it's unsafe, and it's very hard to shift some of these rooted negative analogies about Africa. And a lot of the time there's no smoke without fire, but we can change that, but we have to actively kind of make steps to change it. So, you know, whether it's consciously being like, okay, how do I use an African resource and produce something in Africa so that I can say, okay, you know, these are all conscious decisions that I think we can all make when we travel to Africa, or we, you know, when we're consuming whatever we're consuming. Yeah.
You mentioned that you work with a payment company. That's interesting. That's
yeah,
very
Chipper, check them out. So I'm an ambassador for them, and
okay.
I was just like, you know, really impressed with. We were very aligned because, again, they were talking about people in diaspora. They were talking about, you know, people from Africa who are, you know, who are in diaspora, who've gone on and done well, who send money back home, and so very much aligned with kind of, you know, what is important to me. And again, there were Silicon Valley guys. You know, Jeff Bezos is invested in their company. So they're, you know, they're really inspiring guys. And like even things like, you know, I hope one day we'll have African owners in the Premier League, you know, like.
Might happen. I mean, they were talking about Dangote years ago.
Yeah. I mean, we got enough billionaires in Africa.
There's way more than enough.
I just don't know whether, you know, owners or people, billionaires in Africa would see football as a healthy investment. But I think if you look at like Liverpool, for example, the American owners, I think is FSW. They bought Liverpool in 2010 for 300 million. They're going to sell it for about 4 billion.
Wow.
I'm not going to sit here and do the maths on the just profit.
Over 10x, but crazy.
That's a nice profit, right? Wow. So you got to stay in it and obviously you got to manage the club well. I think what they've done really well of like bringing an amazing coach like Jurgen Klopp, you know, obviously they've won, you know, the Premier League, Champions League within that, FA Cup. They've won everything they need to win within that. But you kind of got to stick it out for a long period to then see the value of the club increase. So, you know, I think Dangote probably, I mean, I don't know Dangote, but I'm assuming that it was probably a thing where he, you know, maybe felt he was going to lose money or whatever. But clubs are selling much quicker than they ever have done.
Why do you think that is? What's going on?
No, I think a lot of it's mismanagement.
Okay.
Some of it is mismanagement. So like Derby, I did a game recently on Derby, and that was an aspect I talked about at the top of the show, was like Derby last year were facing liquidation.
Okay.
You know, Derby's an old club. And it was really just financial mismanagement. Yeah. And like there's all sorts of financial fair play rules and they broke them. But somebody comes in, a local businessman comes in, buys the club. Now Derby are pushing for promotion. So that changes ownership. Abramovich, you know, Chelsea had to sell because of what, you know, obviously the Russia war stuff. Changes hands. That was probably a little bit unexpected, but there's lots of going concerns and sort of business problems in football that mean that like you can, and obviously owners are looking to make a profit. So once they feel that like, okay, they've taken the club to as far as it can go, depending on how long they've stayed in it and what the club have done and sort of what players they've got, etc., you're more likely to make a profit over a period of time because clubs appreciate and broadcasting's come into it and all of these things. So, yeah, I find it really fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Do you think there will ever be a UK black owned Premier League club ever by somebody in the UK?
I'm putting it out there.
Okay.
I'm putting it out there into the universe.
Yeah.
Of course, why not?
I'm saying why not? I've just not seen not evidence, but
I think if you asked the same question maybe 20 years ago, would there ever be an Arab owner? Would there ever be a Russian owner? Would there ever be there's so many American owners? Like I think a lot of this also reflects what's happening in the world. You know, if you go into Bayswater or Mayfair, you know, a lot of it is owned by Arabs or it's owned by, you know, different nationalities of very wealthy people. Obviously, there's been a lot of investment from, you know, Saudi Arabia or Qatar. So I don't see why not.
Yeah.
China, there was a lot of Chinese investment at one point 5-10 years ago. A lot of Chinese owners pulled out, but I don't see why not. That can't be an evolution of, because it's a fact. There is a lot of billionaires in Africa.
Yeah. I was just thinking of this question. Why is it that footballers don't become agents or set up like an agent business? Because I feel like they would have potentially better connections. Not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're an ex.
Yeah.
Really?
So if you're
an ex, you can. Okay.
As an ex-footballer, yes, you can. So someone like Rio Ferdinand owns his own agency and does really well from that.
Yeah.
And you know, Rio will use all of his experience and leadership and pass that on to the young kids. So that's amazing. But he had to retire. But as a player, you can't be sort of part of any agency because there's a conflict of interest. But yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure why, really.
Okay. Ponder.
I think there's probably more than you think.
Yeah,
I think there's probably more former players than you think that they might not shout about it, but they are involved in, you know, players and movement of players and advising players.
Yeah. So you are a pundit at the last World Cup, 2022. Or 2021 now. I think there was a COVID year. It's 2022 because I remember there was one year where it was weird, strange, right? What was the atmosphere like for you whilst you were out there? Because there was a lot of commentary around it, you know, negative headlines around it, and a lot of people that were out there were getting sort of stick around it. But from your perspective, what was the atmosphere like?
Yeah, from my perspective, like, look, I had an amazing time. Like, you know, I feel a lot of privilege, you know, working for ITV, working for Fox, obviously the American broadcaster. You know, we stay in nice hotels, our studio, nice car, nice hotel. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, it was awful. Like, it was a privilege. It really was. And I think you saw how great the World Cup was. I think going into the World Cup, obviously, I had to really sit with myself and be like, how do I feel about some of these issues around, you know, treatment of women and, you know, homophobia and all of these things that were coming up. Now, the reality is that I always come from a position of balance because those issues aren't specific to Qatar. And I said this on air, like you can go on ITV and see it, me saying it, but they're not actually specific to Qatar.
Yeah.
You know, I spent a year in America last year and every other week, kids are getting gunned down.
Yep.
Most, you know, a lot of states just about, you know, approved abortion. There's still issues around gay marriage, you know. So, and that's where the next World Cup is, ironically, right? Exactly. But because it's not an Arab state, people don't really want to talk about that. And people go, oh, it's whataboutery. No, these are world issues that everybody now wants to zoom in on Qatar and say it's a Qatar issue. It's not a Qatar issue. It's a general issue that, you know, whether you're a Premier League where there's players that don't want to come out because they're scared of what the fans are going to shout on the terraces. So for me, like, I just appreciated my privilege. and acknowledged the world issues that are going on in Qatar. Qatar is a much younger country than America, but America's still struggling with it.
Yeah.
So who are we to be like, you know? But in saying that, you know, there were some people that towards the end, particularly for us women, like you could see the mask kind of coming down, like some of the security kind of treated people, you know, in a certain way, and treated women in a certain way, which I didn't like. And, you know, I think there was probably a real desire from Qatar to show the best face.
Yeah.
But we're human beings, right? Like, you know, people are going to, wherever you go in the world, whatever the stereotype may be, something's going to confirm that bias.
Yeah.
Right? So whether you're, you know, people go, oh, don't go to Nigeria because it's unsafe. The littlest thing you'll go, oh my God, it's unsafe, you know, because your mind's already, do you know what I mean? So again, it's not specific to Qatar. It's just the way the world is. Nowhere is perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been to anywhere where you're like, Bali was pretty perfect.
Bali's good, yeah.
Bali was pretty perfect. Bali, I was just zen the whole time. But like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so for me, I didn't really stress myself about, you know, the hypocrisy of it, because it was about just being balanced and saying like, well, I travel a lot and see a lot of good and bad things, and this is just another place. And it was an amazing World Cup.
Yeah,
I really like. I think it's probably arguably the best World Cup we've seen in terms of, you know, big teams getting knocked out, and, you know, Morocco getting to the semi-final for the first time, an African team, Messi winning the World Cup, you know, the storylines. So for me as a pundit, as a broadcaster, it was amazing. And shout out to ITV, man. Like, I love them. You know, I love all the pundits that we worked with, all the presenters. Like, we really had a family vibe going on behind the scenes. Like, every night was a good laugh. And so it was an amazing experience, I have to say. Wow, and whoever doesn't like that, sorry.
Sorry, not sorry, right? I wanted to understand, actually, you know, on the back end of things, is when you get these opportunities, right? And I guess I'm trying to paint the picture for people who, it's not just football, whatever industry they get into, how they get these opportunities. Is it people reaching out to you because it's of your profile? And then obviously you're doing similar things that you've done before? Or is it you sort of say, okay, I'm interested in doing this, can we?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. Okay. A bit of both. I think, you know, as a pundit, you obviously have sort of a portfolio of work that, you know, I've been a pundit since 2014. I was the first female footballer to appear on Match of the Day too. And you know, that went well, and different shows came off the back of that. That's kind of how it works. Okay. And there's a lot of movement in broadcasting. So a producer might work on one show and works on another broadcaster. So you get to build relationships, and, you know, so a lot of it is kind of incidental to your relationship, but you have to do well. Yeah. You can't go on and just talk rubbish and then expect to, you know, to get called on a show. And, you know, a lot of people say to me, oh, well, you're a tick box, you know, you're ticking the box. And it's like, well, if that's the case, you can get any black woman off the street and just sit there. I have to go on this show and still talk sense and give an opinion. So, for me, you know, I don't take for granted the fact that you have to perform like you did when you played, you know, and you have to, you know, offer an opinion. You have to, you know, work with other people and stuff like that. So it is about performance. It's about relationships. But I think that, you know, the best people are quite strategic. They'll say no to this because it doesn't really align with who they are. Like, for example, I've had calls to do like content for betting companies. Okay. There's no amount of money you're going to offer me that's going to align me to do that, because I've already sort of created a profile that doesn't really align with that. Now, that's not me saying that if somebody else wants to do that, they're bad. I'm just saying that's not me. Do you know what I mean? So you almost have to figure out as well what's right for you. You can't do everything. So that's very much kind of how I've approached it. Like, what do I want to represent? What do I want to be? What kind of programs do I, you know, want to be on? What kind of pundit do I want to be? And I'm always evolving within that. Yeah. And now I think we live in a world where there's lots of content creation, like just, you know, people that, you know, you didn't know today and tomorrow they've blown up, you know. There's a lot of that. So I'm trying TikTok. I'm trying.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, man. But I find TikTok hard work a little bit. It's hard work.
A bit,
man.
yeah, you gotta get.
I had to ask them. So I actually sat down with TikTok and was like, how do I do this? Like, this is long. You know, this is when I started feeling old at this point. And there's just so much. Like, it's overwhelming. But on TikTok, I just try and show like a different side of myself, like behind the scenes. If I'm like working as a pundit, what does behind the scenes look like? Or if I go to like a fashion show or whatever. So, you know, that always all feeds into what you're doing.
Wow. That's amazing. It's always nice to hear what the behind the scenes are and how you leverage your network. And again, it's still hard work, like you were saying. I wanted to know, like, how did you feel when I know you started it obviously whilst you were still doing football, but how did you feel doing it? Did you feel like it was a transition for you at all? Was it like, did it come natural to you?
What, punditry?
Yeah. Did you have to like practice on it?
No. I mean, I just as a skill set, like I've always felt quite comfortable sitting and chatting to somebody, or I've always felt like I've had an opinion on football, or I've studied the game, or I watched the game tactically or whatever and enjoy watching football. So in terms of those basic skill sets I've always had, I think opportunity came where when I was in the England team, I probably used to be put forward to do all the interviews that other people didn't want to do. And so the media got to know me a lot quicker, and I think appreciated the fact that I was always willing to kind of have a chat with them. And so I built probably relationships in the media a lot quicker than other players. And so those opportunities then came. People said, oh, why don't you come on our show? And, you know, can we do a 10-minute interview on my show? And I was always like, yeah. And never got paid for it, but it was like, fine, I'm happy in front of the camera and I'll chat to you. And I think that helped. That became something that grew bigger and bigger. Yeah,
that's amazing. You then became, at some point, sporting director for Angel CFC, but that was in the States, and then you decided to leave that. What's the plan next at that point?
So Angel City was really quite a unique opportunity. Like I would never have thought I would get, you know, an opportunity like that. Kind of out of the blue, really. Well, not out of the blue. And again, this is a point about relationships. So one of the owners of Angel City, he used to work he does work as an advisor for Fox.
Okay, wow.
I worked for Fox at the World Cup, 2019 World Cup, and we got on really well. We chatted off camera and stuff, and he obviously became one of the investors of Angel City. So when they were talking about a director of football sporting director role, he put my name forward and contacted me and said, would you be interested in interviewing? So initially I said no, because I was very busy at Aston Villa and I felt that women's football in England was really going to kick off, and it turned out it did. You know, they won the Euros a year later. But they were quite persistent. They came back and said, no, we really want you. And some of the names that were associated were Serena Williams, you know, Alexis Ohanian and her husband, you know, some names that Billie Jean King, like legends that I've, you know, kind of grown up admiring. So it was one of those things like, if I don't do this, I'm probably going to regret it. And it was an opportunity to really build something from scratch, build a football club from scratch, which really doesn't exist other than in the States. You can't do that in England, really. So that's how that came up. And there was a little bit of reluctance because I played in America, and some of the rules around like trading and you know, players are very much a commodity in the sense that you don't really have much power. You're very much owned by a club, and if they want to trade you at the drop of a hat, they can trade you. So the contracts aren't really worth the paper they're written on. If you sign a contract of 2 years in America, they can trade you a day after you signed it, and there's nothing you can do. Wow. So I fundamentally didn't agree with that, and that I didn't like that as a player. So I went to America thinking, can I change this? Can I actually change some of these rules as a sporting director? A little bit, I changed it in terms of like, I said to the players in the first year, unless you come to me and say, I want to leave, we're not going to trade you. And for me, that was a cultural piece because players, I felt like if players don't feel secure in where they are, they're not going to give you their best on the pitch, right? Because you've got to allow people to fail and not think, oh my God, I had a bad training session, they're going to trade me. Because that's how I felt. So little things like that I was quite proud of, but the grand scheme of things, the ecosystem was just very different to England. And it's very hard when you just don't fundamentally agree with how things are done. And so for me, it wasn't a deep thing. Like I was very proud of building a team from scratch, but I was like, I think moving forward, this isn't for me, basically.
I understand.
And I came back to England, and I missed London a lot. LA wasn't really my vibe.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, like a lot of people say that to me, like, you didn't like LA. It's kind of everything that you were about. And I was like, no, like, I think I'm very British. I felt very British in LA. Like I missed like the tea culture, and like I missed like walking by a river and like getting a coffee, and conversations were very transactional in the States.
That's what I heard in LA.
I feel like here, like people do small talk very well, and it's annoying sometimes, but actually it's like respectful, So there's so many things that I was just a bit like, I'm not sure I like this. But yeah, in life you've got to try things, and if it doesn't work out, you come home and you do what you try and move as close as possible to doing what you love. And I love broadcasting. I love where my life is now, where I can kind of try and create things that mean a lot to me or represent something, and hopefully inspire other people to do the same.
Yeah. Amazing. That's, I understand leaving America for that, especially.
Have you spent much time in America?
I haven't been since.
I don't want to say America because
I
actually really love Atlanta. Like Atlanta's a city that is amazing. Like it's a bit of me. I like Atlanta a lot for many reasons. The history, the food, there's deep culture there, and lots of sort of successful Black entrepreneurship and investment. So I don't want to say America, but I think for the most part, like my experience as a player, it was just very like stormy. And LA, I think I spent all my time in a car. So it was. Look, for some people they like that, but for me, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, that's definitely not for me. I haven't been to America since I was 16, so that was almost like 17.
Okay,
so it's been a while.
It's probably changed since then.
Yeah, it's changed.
We've had Obama, we've had Trump since then.
Yeah, exactly. I've never been to LA.
There's been a few changes.
A lot of changes. I've only been to Florida, never been to LA. I wanted to potentially go to LA and Atlanta, so it's gonna happen.
Definitely go to Atlanta. Yeah. I think you'd like Atlanta.
Yeah, I think it's in line with.
There's a lot of this going on in Atlanta.
Exactly. I wanted to ask this question. So in terms of, because you managed to achieve, in my opinion, what you set out to. So you wanted to become a footballer. You went to the highest level. For anybody wanting to achieve sort of what they want to achieve, what kind of tips would you have for them to be able to achieve it? I know it's a very open question there.
Like without sounding too kind of samey, there's no getting away from hard work, dedication. I think that the most amount of joy and gratitude that I feel is doing something you love and being paid for it. I think when you can get to that place, it actually doesn't feel like work, and you probably have to rein yourself in because you're working too much. I find myself sometimes studying a team at 4 a.m. in the morning and I'm loving life. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a bit weird, but that's my passion. That's my passion point. And the next day I'll get on TV and I'll talk about that team, and, that's my job, as a broadcaster, for example. Whatever that is for you, I think that's a kind of way of really enjoying what you do and fulfillment. And I would always say that once you get into that space where you're getting paid to do what you love, you actually end up, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, you probably end up earning more because you're good at what you love to do. it's kind of hard to explain, but there's so many people that make decisions about what they do based on money, but they hate what they do.
Yeah.
And it's so sad because, you know, eventually you kind of gonna end up giving up on that job anyway because you hate it so much. The money is not going to be enough for you.
Yeah.
So that's what I would, and it's easier said than done. You know, not everybody can, you know, do something they love to do. But I think that if you move towards that, or the alternative is work-life balance, have a really healthy work-life balance. So now we live in a world where you can work from home, maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week. In that 1 day or 2 days a week when you're working from home, take time out to do something that really feeds your soul.
Yeah.
Because you'll be surprised how much energy that then gives you to do the job that you don't love, but you kind of need to do it, you know? So for the longest time, I think we don't really think about our own self-care and the things that really feed our energy to then do what we do.
Yeah.
That's what I would definitely. I think I know so many people in the broadcasting space that really love what they do.
Yeah.
And I see it on their faces and I see their energy and it's something that I'm like, I wish like more people could experience this. I tell my younger siblings all the time, like, okay, you know, you're young and you're doing this job now. You might not love it, but this will help you figure out what you want to do. So keep moving towards that, you know, and obviously keep working hard and learning, and don't be afraid of failing, and because that's all part of it. So yeah, that would probably be like whatever that's a North Star for me.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Eni.
You're welcome.
What do you have planned next for yourself?
Oh, there's a lot that I've shared it all, man. Like,
Have you shared it all?
Yeah,
Okay.
You've not been listening.
Okay, I have been listening. Is there more?
Yeah, everything I've said, all the above is next for me. I'm going to continue obviously broadcasting and, you know, cite other projects that I'm enjoying, you know, some content shows, lots. So watch this space.
Looking forward to that. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Eniola Aluko on Instagram, although I have very strict controls, so be nice. You can find me on TikTok. My name is Eni. Are you okay? Are you okay, Eni?
Like that?
Which is a nod to Michael Jackson's. You know that song, Eni?
Yeah,
are you okay?
Criminal, yeah.
So for the longest time, I thought Michael Jackson was actually talking about me. Like, my mom never told me, like, no. But so you know, so it's
it does sound like that, actually.
It does. He's saying Eni.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's where you can find me on TikTok. Although, like, don't kind of come for me because I find TikTok stressful. But I've just discovered the lip syncing function on TikTok. I've discovered how to do it, and I'm a big Bridgerton fan.
Yeah.
And so you might see a little bit of a play on Bridgerton soon, like if I'm feeling in a fun mood.
Okay.
And there's I'm off Twitter, which I hope burns and fails. I'm really putting that into the universe. I hope Twitter burns.
You really dislike it?
Yeah, like what is it good for? It's a hell. It's hell on earth. When I saw talk about bad investments, when I saw Elon Musk, I saw something recently. Elon Musk is trying to spend $3 billion to save Twitter. I'm thinking, I wouldn't even pay £1, bro. Like, what kind of? Do you know how disgustingly awful and racist and negative? It's horrible.
Very negative.
And it's getting progressively, like, people go on Twitter and the worst version of themselves come out because that's the energy that's created from the platform. Like, you know, and it's like, this isn't good. Like, if you kind of replicate that into real life, imagine going somewhere every day and every time you're in that place or you come out of that place, you just feel angry and negative and you get abuse hurled at you and people then pile on that abuse. You would leave the place.
Yeah, you would, yeah.
Or you'd ask the police, can you please shut down this place?
Yeah.
So why are we sitting here like, oh yeah, it's okay? No, it's not okay.
Yeah,
like,
it's not.
And look, you get that on Instagram, but I think the controls are better on Instagram.
Much better.
And you can control kind of what you see, because in the real world you will get good and bad stuff. But I think there's a lot to be said for like, shut the thing down. Like, don't spend 3 billion, Elon Musk, please. Like, just shut it down.
Yeah.
Be done with it.
It is a negative platform. I probably spend the least time on there. I think I spend the most time probably Instagram, TikTok.
I know a lot of people who have come off Twitter and literally like for mental health reasons.
Yeah.
Like they can't, it's not humanly okay.
No.
Like it's not okay. And I feel quite passionately about it. I'm praying, like I'm praying to God that the whole thing crumbles.
It is nasty. It is nasty. I've got to be honest about
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look, for me as a pundit, obviously I've probably, but like the worst form of abuse.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not something it's I've learned to not lose sleep over it.
Yeah.
But like, is that normal? Is it normal to be like, oh, this is kind of like par for the course? Like racism and sexism and misogyny is like, it's just what you get on Twitter. Like, how did we get there? Like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And like, it's not okay that young people like contemplate life because they're being cyberbullied because a platform. What?
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah.
Like,
it's true.
Yeah, like, don't get me started on Twitter. Yeah. I'm praying that it's done. Soon.
Okay, now it makes sense why I couldn't find you on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not. So you ain't gonna find me on Twitter.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm not really active.
It is deactivated. It's funny because it's been deactivated since I think October. I was off it for 18 months and then I got back on it during the World Cup because as a pundit, you kind of want to, live tweet during games and stuff because it's kind of aids some of the conversations that you have. But it's not terrible if you don't. So I came off it and I recently went back on it for literally 10 seconds to post a picture. So that it was the picture of Elon, the post of Elon Musk wants to save Twitter for 3 billion. And I tweeted and said, I wouldn't pay £1. Let it burn.
Oh my God. You must have got on.
So I put it on it. And I mean, it was a little bit of, I wanted that to be my last tweet ever. I wanted that to be my last tweet. Like, this thing needs to be let go. Why are you trying to save this?
Yeah. Humanity
doesn't need it.
No. I think it's definitely a platform that it is negative. It's probably the darkest form. Definitely.
I mean, look, there's an argument to say like if Twitter didn't exist, something else will pop up where people can express their hatred. Because that's what it is. There's a lot of unhappy, hateful people who use Twitter as an outlet for their own, for their own release. But a new version would learn from Twitter and have better controls, so that ultimately, like, you just don't see that stuff if you don't want to see that stuff.
Yeah. Completely agree. Do you have any final words for the listeners and watchers?
No. Just obviously keep going with what you're doing. I think obviously Savvy Wallet's a great platform to talk about important things, like finance and I've watched your podcast a few times and I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I like that because again, some of these sort of areas are a little bit untouched or unspoken, and I think the more that we can normalize these conversations around like money and finance and saving and money exchange within our community, then the more we're going to keep growing as a unit. So yeah, those are my final words. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Eni.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing behind the scenes as well and what you're doing in business and what you're doing in investing. It's very interesting. Chess piece, I've never heard of that before.
Listen, I don't really know if there's a market because I haven't sold.
You might have created one,
yet, but I think because there's so much history in terms of chess, there's a value to that kind of art. Or I just keep them.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, no, I think I'm going to look into that. I'm definitely going to look into that.
Yeah, why not? I might have given you a little gem.
Yeah, you may have, and the listeners and watchers. Watchers, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Takeoff Experience. And yeah, we'll see you next week's episode.